An absolutely beautiful and slightly terrifying model of one of the most important characters to the 40k universe today. It seems that the War Master Horus has been reforged with this magnificent Horus Ascended model for the Horus Heresy. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're doing a bit of a roundup of the previews from Nova Open. I think it's fairly safe to say that this is a preview that they've kind of delivered on the hype for. Not only have we seen the entirety of the range for the Leagues of Votan, but now we've got a spectacular new sculpt for one of the Primarchs of 40k, Horus the War Master, coming home to take down his father and the whole of Terra. As miniature releases go for 40k, the biggest, baddest, and scariest resculpt of the War Master Horus is about one of the most important releases that Games Workshop could possibly do. For the 40k timeline, arguably the two single most important characters to the entirety of the universe and setting are the Emperor and Horus the War Master. He is the chap who's named the entire Horus heresy that's led to the general state of affairs in the 41st millennium, so it's a pretty big deal when they're daring to resculpt this guy, perhaps the ultimate embodiment of the Chaos Gods made of flesh at their pinnacle. The new model is a bit of an interesting idea that they've got for the game, and apparently one that's going to be going forward and allowing them to make some more Primarch sculpts. Basically, over around the last decade, Forge World has been gradually releasing sculpts of the Primarchs from Warhammer 30k, and finally they've managed to get through the entire set, the full 18 miniatures barring the two that we don't know about. Over the last several years, the Horus Heresy series of novels has been reaching its peak. Finally, the narrative has been grinding towards the eventual confrontation amongst the battle barge between Horus and the Emperor, and with this narrative alongside the relaunch of the Horus Heresy, it seems that they're going to be resculpting not just Horus but other of the Primarchs with a new Ascended form, swollen with the power of Chaos and the Dark Gods. Apparently the general design of the miniature is supposed to be a fair bit bigger, more threatening, as if he had all the powers of the Chaos deities within him. His armor and styling certainly does remind me of that classic artwork of him confronting the Emperor that was in previous 40k rulebooks. According to their stream, apparently it's not just a sculpt that's going to be coming for Horus himself, but they're going to be redoing a fair few of the other Primarchs this way. I guess it wouldn't exactly be the biggest stretch to redo the other traitor Primarchs once they've been a little bit more corrupted, but maybe not just got to their entire massive Demon Primarch 40k potential. That certainly seems like it could have some interesting promise. I guess they could potentially redo some of the Loyalists if they fancied as well. I guess Corvus got a little bit dark and shadowy towards the end of the heresy, and I can imagine a fair few of the other Loyalists might have changed a bit or got a bit more hard-pressed after having fought through all the horrors that were unleashed on them. In any case though, getting back to Horus himself, it looks like compared with his previous sculpt, he's got a fair bit spikier. A lot of his armor seems to be very much inwoven with Chaos iconography now, as opposed to being fairly plain and nondescript. He's acquired himself a few trophies, with some skulls and heads slung at his belt, perhaps particularly noble Space Marines who has managed to fell and then taken their head as a trophy. This pose has him gesturing with his big mace and extending the talon of Horus as if he's about to deliver a blow from it, which I think is quite cool. The other one has him a bit more of a triumphant general, but it's cool to see him in action, and to be honest it's kind of impossible to ignore the sheer amount of bodies that he's wading across. Looks like he's stumbling through an absolute charnel pit of slain Space Marines, maybe a subtle or not so subtle reference to exactly what he's done to the galaxy. The Space Marines here look like they're from the Salamanders chapter, judging by that shoulder pad. I did quite enjoy the joke that they made in stream about them being surprised to find that many Salamanders towards the end of the Horus Heresy. As for the model itself, they haven't actually confirmed exactly when it's going to be releasing. I'd hope perhaps in the not too distant future if they are choosing to show him off in full. Apparently he is going to be a Forge World resin sculpt, so kind of similar to their standard Horus Heresy character series. Unlike quite a lot of kits for the game's relaunch, it doesn't seem like they're going to be redoing him in plastic. He does look incredibly detailed with that resin though. In general, the rest of the Primarch series were very well received, and I think that this guy's going to be absolutely no exception. It is really cool when they manage to take a character or concept within 40k and absolutely knock it out of the park. It's exactly how I'd imagine the War Master would be, and it is kind of fun to see the version that was in the cinematic trailer that they did for the launch of this version of the Horus Heresy rendered in resin. Of course, maybe the release of this guy wasn't the biggest surprise in the world. He does have distinct rules in Horus Heresy. The new books had a different stat line for his normal profile and his Horus Ascended profile, and that wouldn't have really made too much sense to me unless they were going to mean to release a different sculpt. I'll admit I'm nowhere near as familiar with Heresy rules as 40k, but he's reportedly 1000 points in game. Unless they're going to release a model for the Emperor anytime soon, I can't imagine anything else getting more powerful than that from a character point of view. Otherwise, they have given us a few other pictures of the model. We've got a view of his back on the left here and a close-up of his face. His wolf pelt from his previous model appears to be getting a little bit more ragged, and it seems like he's got even more severed heads on his back here as well. His cape's rather tattered as well, looks like he's becoming a bit more of a battle-hardened warlord, as opposed to a more confident and menacing commanding general. Otherwise, here we've got a side-by-side shot of the new model and the old. Kind of interesting to see the differences in details between the two models. Obviously, there's the big difference between the massive mountain of skulls and bodies compared with that rather nice looking staircase, even if it has probably seen better days in battle. And really quite a lot of the finer details on his armour just tended to be a bit more stylistic and less obviously chaos spikes and things on the old one compared with the new. Just in general, I think I do like the new sculpt slightly better than the old one. That is saying something, as I did quite like the old model for Horus, but I think they've done certain details about him really well. I think the sculpture of his face is really quite menacing, and I feel in particular the talon of Horus looks a little bit more mechanical and obviously dangerous in the new one compared with the more static pose on the old. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say though. Which one of these do you prefer out of the two, and why? I guess you could argue that they're both equally fine, trying to do slightly different things, but I do rather like the dark glory of the new sculpt. So overall, a pretty momentous reveal as it goes. Always cool to see a new Primarch model, and there's very few that are more exciting than the actual War Master himself, arguably second to only the Emperor in power. It is kind of interesting that they're saying that this guy is literally the first in a whole new character series from Forge World. At least according to their follow-up Warhammer community article, apparently it will represent each of the Primarchs at the height of the heresy, and that would at least imply that they are going to redo each one of the other ones in their new sculpts. To quote them, it says either under the sway of chaos or rallying to defend the Imperium in its darkest hour. Not entirely sure what they're going to be doing with Ferrus Manus if he gets a look in. I guess he might be somewhat conspicuous by his absence. I was rather expecting just some more standard plastic Horus Heresy 2.0 kits to come out with this preview. Really cool to see such an iconic character, and I'll certainly aim to cover any new sculpts of the Primarchs that come out here on the channel, so feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention one way in which you can help support if you want to, and that's my Element Games affiliate link, which you can find down in the video description. Element Games is a UK-based discount retailer. They usually give 10 to 20% off Warhammer models, and it can be one way to help support the channel on things that you are already going to buy if you click through the link and order something off them. If you buy anything after clicking, it doesn't cost any more whatsoever, but a small amount does go to help support Auspex Tactics at no extra cost to yourself. For people over in the USA, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. That one works in much the same way. Click the link, buy literally anything off Amazon, Warhammer or not, and a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics. A massive thank you to you guys who have been doing that. It really does help keep the channel going. And a big thank you for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.